And hello there, it's Dr. Brenda, sociologist, financial coach, founder of the Gutsy Women Finances community, traveling the U.S. with my three cats. There's a sleepyhead right there, Isabella. And hey, please subscribe below if you already subscribed. Thank you so much. Hit that button to be notified of new videos. I have the pleasure today of talking to Heather Ryan, and Heather is she's the tax queen. So Heather handles my taxes. I'm a full-time RVer, as I mentioned. I have my domicile in Florida, and trying to get our taxes done, that can be a challenge. Sometimes people especially don't understand, how this life works, and I've had somebody else do my taxes the first time around, and I ended up teaching her what she should be looking for. So I'm so happy to have run into Heather. So you are an RVer yourself. Give us a little bit of background, what your RV lifestyle looks like and how long you've been doing this, and
Sure.
whatever you like.
Well, first, just thanks for having me on here. And so my husband and I hit the road in 2016. We were full time for 5 years. And then, I don't know, whatever that is, date wise, a couple of years ago, we bought a home base property so that we have a place to come back to. I think a lot of, COVID kind of just pushed people having a place to stay, having, being welcome into a community. And we really like having that home base, and hitting the road when we want to for a few months at a time, meeting up with friends, attending conferences, all that jazz. So yeah, we still love to travel.
So is your husband working from the RV as well?
Yeah, we both work remotely. He actually built a software startup completely from the road, with another RVer, and it sold. This is part of the reason why we settled here. It got investment money. So yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Excellent. And for you, I mean, your season is based on IRS tax season, right? So
Sure.
things probably, you get the procrastinators like myself, and you got the procrastinators, which is probably most people. So how
Sure.
does all of that, sort of that influx of, oh my gosh, it's April 15th and got to get my taxes done. How does all that play out in terms of your schedule? Yeah.
I guess I'm a little busier with work, obviously, during tax season, but it doesn't limit traveling. I still have scheduled some travel days in there. And I can honestly sit in the passenger seat and respond to email and keep up with a few things while we're driving. So it's still doable. Otherwise, yeah, we don't let it limit us. How's that?
What are the challenges for you in terms of working from the road?
As far as my business or just in general, I mean, I think the number one challenge is getting Wi-Fi, making sure you have connections. I think any
Absolutely.
business owner that works from the road will answer that the same. um, yeah, so that's really the biggest challenge. And thankfully, we've only had a couple of places where we had no Wi-Fi signal at all, and had to move on, unfortunately. But I
So
think that
what do you use? Because I know people are curious, because
sure.
we all kind of hobble our own systems together.
We do that's for sure. I think it's changed over the years. We started with an unlimited Verizon plan, and that worked really well for us. We've now shifted, so we have Starlink. So when we travel, we have found Starlink to be the best option. We do primarily stay out west. I don't know if it's more available out west than on the East Coast, but that's been our go-to for the past, let's say, year. So
Okay, yeah, I've heard a lot about Starlink, and then I've heard that you really need to have no trees, around you. So it's like, well, and I use a combination of Cricket Invisible, which is AT&T and Verizon. So
Verizon,
I
yep.
use both of those, and I check ahead at the campground and make sure that I have cell reception. But sometimes I'm at Starbucks, you know?
That that
Yeah,
is so true.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And never depend on campground Wi-Fi, right?
Never depend on campground Wi-Fi. And the other place we've had good success is going to a library. public libraries, and they may even have like a quiet room that you could work in. I have sensitive data, obviously, that I work with, so I prefer to be in a private location. I will not pull up someone's financial information in a Starbucks where someone can be looking over my shoulder. So that's
I'm relieved to know that.
that's a consideration. I mean, I could do some email or some basic, like posting a blog or whatever, working on stuff like that. But I would never pull up personal information in a public setting. So I think the public libraries have been really good for that. Or heck, you can also sometimes sit outside Starbucks in your truck and still get their Wi-Fi.
True, true.
So there are workarounds for all things, right?
For
Yeah.
for I mean, a lot of us are out here because you can shut the laptop and usually go for a really nice hike or do
Uh-huh.
something really great. You have the flexibility. Do
Yep.
you, you know, but at the same time, if we wanted to, we could sit and overwork ourselves, same as what we would do in an office. So, do
Mhm.
you have any strategies for sort of trying to keep that balance?
I think it depends on the time of year. In summertime, we might get up and do a walk or a hike in the morning while it's cool, and then we'll work in the heat of day. Or vice versa in the wintertime, we might work in the morning when it's still a little cold, and then as it warms up in the afternoon, we'll go out and explore. And sometimes, that's taking a hike. Sometimes that's going to find a local brewery or like whatever the local attraction is. So it can vary also when that might be open.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the balance is just get the work done and close the laptop and have some fun. Even if that's just sitting outside your RV and reading a book, like
Exactly.
just taking in the view. Like it doesn't have to be this grand thing that you're spending a lot of money doing, but just
Yeah.
living instead of just always working.
Yeah, I find that a lot of people complain about the bad weather, but those are days that I can sit in front of the laptop and catch up, and then when the sun shines,
Yep.
I'm outside. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty sweet way to run.
Yeah.
Um,
Unless you have deadlines, in which
yeah,
case you have
yeah,
to
yeah.
work whatever
Yes,
whatever the
yes,
weather's doing.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I can do a lot of my work in advance. So
Sure.
you have built a reputation as really, I I have three cats, and the one, I don't know if you can hear her, but she's got a little toy mouse. So she makes
Oh,
this noise when she picks up the toy mouse, and then she has to bring it to me. So
that's
background noise.
very
And
cute.
yeah. So what was I saying? Where was I going? I hate that. Coco.
Talking about working balance.
Uh, yeah. Oh, so you've really built a reputation as sort of like the tax queen. That's what you go by for RVers. So you get, I'm sure, a fair amount of questions that come up. So for the folks that I work with too, they often ask what kinds of things they can write off. So I'm doing this video right now. I'm in a campground. Can I write off the campground fees? I've got a designated desk area in my RV. Can I write off that? What can I write off? What can I not? What are the red flags? So any like advice that you could give us in terms of the types of questions you generally get and the answers you give?
Sure. So you kind of touched on some of them. Taking a home office when you run a business remotely, uh, for the most part, I say that that's not really doable just because you work at the dinette. But you and also eat your breakfast there or, do some other personal things like draw. I mean, whatever it is that you do, play with your cats on the table. I don't know. um, so yeah, in general, it's such a tiny space that there really isn't that home office deduction. I do see people with a toy hauler or a bunkhouse, and they specifically create that office space or even like a studio for someone who's maybe a traveling artist or whatever. And in that case, yes, that's allowed, but it's rare or less common. So that's one thing. And the other thing you kind of touched on is taking campground fees. And that kind of goes along with like mileage deduction and all of that. And for the most part, that's your personal lifestyle choice. So campground fees are not a deduction. There are exceptions. I work with my individual clients to get to know their business, to get to know them, and maybe allow some of that. So I can't give a flat out no or yes, and you probably are used to hearing that when it comes to taxes. But in general, it's a working with someone individual to understand, is some of that deductible? Is it not? So
Oh, we've got internet connection issues, so let's see. We'll hang on here for a bit. I'm gonna pause the recording. Um, okay, we were just talking about the internet, and boom, everything went down. So this is part of reality, and it is actually in a house too, right? So it doesn't. You're in an RV. I have full cable internet, and it still happens here. So we were talking, Heather, about like, we have these common questions, and for you, you really have to interview and speak to each person individually to try to find out what really is a valid deduction and what isn't.
yep, yeah. And I mean, any tax professional that you work with, they should get to know you as a client. I don't care if it's me, if it's somebody else, making sure that they are asking these questions and you're really explaining what you do, and your situation. Because if you don't give that information and they're not asking for it, then yeah, you're not going to get necessarily the best tax situation, and get all your deductions. So there was that one. I wanted to talk about mileage as well.
Mhm.
And taking mileage is a really big red flag, like high mileage. So I'm really cautious there. And I never say you can't take anything. Taking, if you're parked at a campground and going to meet with a client, for sure that counts, as mileage. But driving from point A to point B, where it's 1,000 miles or 500 miles between the points, is not necessarily, a tax deduction. So that's another thing I will work with my individual clients. And what's your business? What are you doing? Why do you think it's valid? Do you have a business, a log where you're recording those mileage and why you're driving them? So we just kind of work together to get the best scenario. And I also ask for, what's your risk level? Like, are you comfortable with risk,
Ah,
or do you want to step it back, and play it safe? And so that's again, individual preference. We all have different factors coming in. So
and by risk, I am you're talking audit risk.
correct.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. When you do see folks getting audited, so they're getting audited on mileage types of things and
Mm-hmm.
maybe office space and sort of deductions that just don't look right.
Sure. It can be that dialed down. It doesn't have to be the full return. It can be, hey, you wrote $30,000 of mileage. We need to see a log. We need
Okay.
that proof. It can be that specific. It doesn't have to be
So,
a full.
all right. So just like everything else, it's about documentation. Whatever you
It,
do, you better be able to back it up with evidence.
correct. And
Okay.
it better be written. And written can be electronic. The IRS has caught up in that respect. They take electronic records are perfectly fine. It doesn't need to be paper. So even tax records, that you receive 1099s or whatever else, it can be kept electronic. It doesn't need to be original copies. And also if you have receipts. So like if you go to Best Buy, buy a new computer, you can take a picture of that receipt. And if you lose the paper copy, that's okay. Electronic is fine.
Well,
So,
yeah, that is an
and
advancement. So,
yes, and that's really great, especially for those who live small and don't have a lot of storage space. We can put them onto the cloud somewhere. I'll make sure it's backed up so that you always have that data. And hopefully you never need any of those records. But worst case scenario, you have them.
cool. Well, most of us full timers, if you don't have a home base, you've got to find a domicile.
Mhm.
So the three most popular states are Florida, Texas, and South Dakota.
Yep.
Taxes, registration, they make it easier for RVs. You're working with people now with different domiciles. Are you how are you, working with some of the are you able to be a specialist in especially some of those popular states for full timers?
So the three popular states are popular because they have no income tax.
Correct.
So they actually are, I'll say, some of the easiest states to file with because there's no state tax return. But just because you might domicile in Florida or Texas doesn't mean you won't have a state tax return. Some people that are work campers, traveling nurses and things, you might actually physically go into a job and receive a W-2 from those companies, in which case, whatever you spend the summer in Montana work camping, you now have Montana income. So you do have state tax obligations. I know to date, I've tallied it up and I've filed in like 30 states. So I will research if I'm not familiar with the states. But I don't shy away from it. I have people that file in multiple states, even if they're domiciled in Texas or Florida or South Dakota, like non-income tax. So there's all kinds of situations.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting point for work campers who are, doing the beet harvest up north, and then they're working for Amazon at one of the fulfillment centers, and then they're, different states, different places, and it's basically you got all these W-2s to play with.
Yes, yes. And then they just get overwhelmed. The taxpayers like, I don't know, I have to file here and there, and I don't know what any of it means, and I don't know how to do it. Can you help? So a lot of times you'll get a refund from those states because you're not a resident. And the company might be withholding a little more than they need to be or whatever. But sometimes they owe as well. It just depends on the state and the situation. Traveling nurses, and then also even like an electrician or somebody who's traveling from different construction sites and working. Those are some examples of kind of doing physical work at a
Uh-huh.
company.
Okay. Can you give us, say, top three tips on, for people who are working full time in their RV, top three tips on maybe how to save on taxes or what to do about taxes,
Sure.
whatever comes up in your mind.
Let's see. Well, my number one tip, we sort of touched on it, is really just keeping good records.
Okay.
So don't wait till now to go back like a year from now or a year prior or 6 months prior, because I don't know, I don't remember what I had for dinner last night, let alone what an expense was from 6 months ago. So keep up with the books, and however that looks for you, whether that's using an app like QuickBooks or just using a spreadsheet if you think it's a little more simplified, and you'll keep up with it. So yeah, record keeping kind of ties into bookkeeping if you're running your own business. Let's see, what's this last one? I don't know. What's the third tip? I think actually, honestly, working with a tax professional, a lot of people think that they can do it themselves, and I end up helping them when they either get a letter that they did something wrong, or they come to me the following year and I was like, well, you missed this deduction, or that thing didn't get taken. So for sure, there are great options out there for doing it yourself. But if you are second guessing anything, and if you're a small business owner, I really do recommend working with a professional. They're going to give you the best guidance. You run into quarterly estimated tax payments, and just understanding all of that and helping you through that. I myself work with my clients year round. So if you have a small business and you have questions come up in July or September, just reach out to me. I don't want you left hanging or struggling. And I work with them also just to help give those quarterly estimated payments some numbers.
Okay.
We can make adjustments as the year progresses, and business does really well, or business isn't doing so well, and we can scale back. So yeah, look for a professional that's going to help you year round. That's going to answer your questions, going to take the time to really get to know you as a client and a person, and not
Right.
just a number.
So how can people reach you? What's the
Really
best way?
the best way is my website, so tax-queen.com. You can also find me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I have a YouTube channel, but really all that's linked on my website. So,
Okay,
and then,
well,
oh,
I'll add your website in the description. So people, hey, if you're watching this, go into the description. You can just follow the link to go to our tax queen.
perfect. Cool.
Great. Any final thoughts you know, maybe there are prospective RVers watching this, or like, you know, I
Sure.
wonder if I could do this from the road.
I say do it. Take life by the horns and jump on in. I think it's really rewarding, and I mean, even as a small business owner, it's a really just to be in control of your own money making and freedom. Yeah,
Yep,
so
yep.
do it.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to shut down, but hang around for a little bit, Heather.
Okay,
Thank you
cool.
so much for being
Thanks.
with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Okay, and all right, guys, we'll see you next time. And you got any questions on, or if you'd like to be interviewed because you're working from your RV, just get in touch with me. Let's do a little interview and have fun with this. For now, we'll see you guys later. Bye bye.